Good evening and welcome everyone to GIA Presents Talk the Tingz, a show where we engage in open discussion about unique challenges that face the Black diaspora. And this is What is Blackness Part 2? What is Blackness Part 2? And I'm so glad that you've joined us. A little bit first about GIA real quick. GIA Productions, we are a performing arts group made up of writers, spoken word artists, singers, dancers, educators, choreographers, and graphic artists who are dedicated to empowering, engaging, and entertaining audiences while tackling issues connected to the global Black experience, both past and present. We've been featured in the Toronto Fringe Festival, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, drama festival in Canada. We have been a part of the Toronto Public Library's Black History Month celebrations, and we have performed at schools, community centers, churches, and theaters across the GTA. My name is Greg Burkett, and I am an executive producer and writer with GIA Productions, and I'm also your host for this evening's amazing show. Last time we took a look at the topic, what is Blackness? We looked at it from an American, a South American, as well as a Canadian perspective. And tonight we're going to be looking at the same topic, but this time we're having a look at it through a British, Caribbean, and again, a Canadian lens. So, you know, many of you who are of Caribbean descent, and even not, many continental Africans as well, leaving the Caribbean as well as Africa in the 1950s through to the 1970s, England was the first stop. Right, England was indeed the mother country for the Caribbean as well as parts of continental Africa, and people who were leaving those places were going to England. We know about or some of you may not know, but there's something called the double lap immigrant, and that is families that went to England first and then came to North America afterward. Right, so England was the first stop. And we have to understand that people living in the Caribbean were given an image of or an understanding of Blackness that was mediated through a British lens, right? Before, even before leaving the Caribbean, right? So in the Caribbean, you had Blackness being mediated through a British lens because England was, as I said before, the mother country, or before leaving Africa, English-speaking or parts of Africa that were colonized by the British, you had things being interpreted and you being given value and understanding of self through a British lens. So tonight we're gonna explore how Blackness was presented and understood in the Caribbean and Canada, which were both the Caribbean and Canada share. We have a shared history of being British colonial outposts, and then we're gonna look at how Blackness was mediated and understood in England itself. So this is really an interesting show tonight. It's going to be a little different from the one that we had prior to this one. Though we're going to be discussing the same topic, we're getting different perspectives. And again, this is very interesting for me because even my family, my parents went to England first after leaving the Caribbean and then came to Canada. And then they had the crowning jewel, which is me. But you know, they made a stop in England first and then came to Canada. So this is going to be a really rich and interesting discussion, and I'm really looking forward to it. So without any further ado, we're going to get into, we're going to take a look at a quick clip here, and then I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists to you. And I know that you have made the best decision you could make tonight to be here with us. So let's take a quick look at this clip, and then we're going to get into things.
What is Blackness to me?
Blackness to me. Blackness.
To me personally, Blackness is...
Whew. That's a deep question. All right.
Blackness is me.
I always think about Chimamanda's, in her book, Americana, how the character was saying that she became Black when she went to America because she was just Nigerian before, like she didn't have to be Black, which makes me feel like it's really a political thing and it's something that unifies us. Yeah. Like people from different countries and tribes, and yeah, it's just a way that we can band together and support
Collective
each other.
identity.
Yeah.
When we homogenize and we try and create sort of a bullet point list of what blackness is, it can sort of exclude people who have different ideas of it, or it means different things to them. It's varied, I think, it is the way I'd say it.
All right, so I want you, those of you that are watching, know that you can participate and you can throw your thoughts up in the chat there. What is blackness to you, right? But as I said before, the clip there, I'm going to bring the panelists out. But also, I want to reiterate, not only do I want you to participate, I do want you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel here, GIA Productions. And of course, we're on social media. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, right? Make sure that you, and of course, subscribe here on YouTube to our channel. So yeah, without any further ado, I'm going to bring out Simone James Henry. Simone James Henry.
Hello, Greg.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing good. Do you want me to say part of things?
Yeah. Yes, that is the start I want us to get off to, man. Yeah, no, don't say it all proper like you know. No, I like the first one. That's what I like, right? And I gotta say, I like the look, man. The vibrant yellow top with the edges slicked down.
There we go. We tried.
We're looking proper. Okay, all right. So Simone James Henry is originally from London, in England. And she has also lived in Toronto for several years before relocating to Texas. So she's going to give us multiple perspectives. Simone holds a BA in marketing and law from London Guildhall University, CIM in marketing, a postgrad in project management. So she is well educated and ready to share all of that knowledge with us. See, I tried to say it like I tried. Her experience spans across international regions, working corporately for many companies. She now works as a VP at Union Bank within the online digital experience team. Over the years, Simone has volunteered for various organizations like Right to Play, the BBPA, a Black Business and Professional Association. Some of you who are based here in Toronto will recognize that name, and served on the board of directors for Discover You. Simone is married to her husband, Nigel Henry. Together, they have two beautiful girls, Hannah and Renee. Simone, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Next, I want to bring out Drew Thomas. Drew.
What's up?
Yes, man. Yes, man. Yes. And me and this guy go way back. We've known each other since we were 14 years old, and that was just like about 3 years ago.
Right?
Whatever,
3, 4,
yeah, 2.5.
Give or take, right? Yeah.
We go way back to high school, man. And I'm just so proud to know this guy, and I'm so excited to have him on the show today. Drew is a former TV journalist who made the career change into education about 17 years ago. He's the father of 6-year-old twin boys. You got to see these guys; they're adorable. And he has a degree in sociology and a master's in education. He's an avid sports enthusiast, and we chop it up about sports all the time.
All the time.
Yes, all the time, man. The Raptors and whatever, man. The Jays, whatever, right? And he is a real estate investor. His other passion is being a strong advocate and educator on social justice issues, particularly surrounding the Black community. Drew, glad to have you here.
Glad to be here, my brother.
All right,
glad to see you, Simone.
Nice to meet you and to see you, Drew.
Yeah.
Cool. And I am going to bring out Andrew Smith, not to be confused with Drew. This is Andrew, not Drew. All right. And this is Andrew, and the proper pronunciation for his last name is Simit.
No, it isn't.
No? Okay. All right. Andrew Smith. Andrew grew up in the Caribbean on the beautiful island of Jamaica. He is from Mondeville.
Yes,
and he has lived in Canada for the past 30 years. He is an entrepreneur who operates an appliance service business and is an amateur enthusiast of African history and the African diaspora. And I got to tell you, I am an educator. I'm a teacher. My major was in history in university, and I used to go to this gentleman all the time for insight with regards to the essays and stuff that I was writing when I was in school. So he's calling himself an amateur African historian, but he is a wealth of knowledge, and he's going to share that with us this evening. He is married with 3 adult children and 4 grandchildren. Andrew Smith, thank you very much for joining us this evening, sir.
No problem, man. I'm glad to be here.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Jackie Robinson. Wow, and we know that name, don't we? Jackie Robinson, right? But it's not the Jackie Robinson that we know in the history books, but she's gonna be making history because she is an amazing woman with a lot of accomplishments. And I want to say right off the top, she is a PhD candidate, so she is going to be shortly Dr. Jackie Robinson. Yes, Simone, give her that round of applause, right?
Thank you.
So she's going to be Dr. Robinson the next time we have her on, right? So Jackie was born in England. Where she did her training as a nurse midwife. She immigrated to Canada in 1990. Jackie and her husband have 3 children, a son 23 years old, a daughter 21, and a son 19. And it's amazing to look at her and think that she has children that old, right? Because she doesn't. She looks like she's 23 herself. Jackie, yes, I'm going down thick tonight. Jackie currently teaches student nurses in the Health Sciences Department Collaborative Program at Centennial College. Jackie is working on her PhD in nursing education, aiming to complete the program next year. She has written a book that has an autobiographical approach titled At the Back of the Class, the only Black female child in an all-white British country school. I don't know about you, but I want to pick that book up, right? That title right there is a mouthful, and it says so much. And it has piqued my curiosity for sure. So with that being said, thank you so much, Jackie, for joining us tonight. Looking forward to chopping it up with all of you and having an amazing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to dive right into things here. And the first question, and I'm putting this out to everyone. I'm going to give you, an opportunity to jump in on this and to quickly tell me. And I'm going to go to Simone first. So Simone, I want you, if you can, do you have a working definition of Blackness, right? Do you have a definite, can you define Blackness, or to you, is it something that cannot be defined? Right. So just give us your thoughts quickly on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, it's a great question. I acknowledge I'm Black. I am Black. When I get the application forms, I tick the box. But, when I grew up, Blackness was defined to me as, you're Jamaican Black. Right, so my grandparents moved from my grandfathers were the first that came over to England via Windrush. Okay, and for those that are not familiar, Windrush was a movement. Okay, it was the name of the one of the first ships that came over from the Caribbean to England to fulfill a labor shortage. The country needed to be rebuilt, and they recruited a number of individuals from various islands across the Caribbean. When they arrived, they kind of assimilated in different parts of England. And my grandfathers didn't know each other. They went to different areas, but the culture was so rich in our family. Every Sunday it was family dinner, church on Saturday. And so my culture and my identity, that Black side of me, was really birthed through the eyes and lens of Jamaican grandparents and parents. So that was my identity. And it wasn't until later on in life where I actually then did my own personal research of, Blackness and identity outside of the Jamaican culture. I have a lot more to say, but for me, my Blackness was defined by my family and my environment on the weekends. Like Jackie in the week, I was pretty much lonesome, right, in the school system. And Jackie, you might touch on this a little later, but understanding the Black identity at school was it was Black American history. It wasn't until later on in life where I actually learned about Black British history and the wonderful contributions that was given by, people that were born and bred in the UK like myself. So for me, Blackness was my family and culture. Later on in life, it became a lot more rounded.
Okay. And it's so interesting that you talk about this, this notion that the British went to the Caribbean and recruited individuals from the Caribbean to come over and to work. And the same thing happened here in Canada, right? It started in the early 1900s where, even before that, they went and they brought some Jamaican Maroons to Nova Scotia. But after that, in the early 1900s, you had the British going to Barbados and Jamaica and recruiting men to come over and work in the steel plants here in Nova Scotia.
That's right.
And then women from the French-speaking island of Guadeloupe, they brought them over to work as domestics. And then later on in the 50s and 60s, they had the West Indian domestic labor scheme and brought women up again to work to fill labor shortages. So this is something that they always would do in their colonial outposts. Thank you for giving us that history with the Windrush there. And I'm sure it's going to come up again in our conversation. I want to go to Drew Thomas now. Now, Drew, you were born in England, but came here at a very young age. And I want you to talk, briefly tell us quickly, do you have a working definition with regards to Blackness? Or do you think it's something that cannot be defined? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Greg, I think when I came here from England, like around 4 or 5 years of age, I remember I had this big afro, had a Cockney accent, and I remember not knowing. I was 5 years old, so I didn't really kind of even kind of navigating the world the way I knew it. But the time that I really felt that I'm something different was when somebody called me the N-word really loud, and I actually went back to them and I said, well, you know what, you're that too. And I was a white kid, because I thought that's a comeback as far as I was concerned. I was about 6 or 7 and it was a comeback. And it wasn't until my mom heard me say that, she brought me in the house and I could see the tears in her eyes, and I could see that, wait a second, that was no comeback. That was something was totally different. And I remember living in the area that I lived in, because my mom still lives there right now. We were like the Huxtables of the area. We were like the first Black family in the area, because they went from Jamaica, they got educated in England, so nursing degree, engineering degree. Dad and mom got jobs here. I never forget, my dad got a job as an engineer here with an airplane company. Mom became a nurse. And then they bought the house in a nice little, cushy little kind of area in Etobicoke. And we had Ontario housing up the street, Black and brown. We had my area, which was all full of Italians and Marios and Luigis and everything else. And then there was me, kind of stuck in the middle. And I realized, wait a second, my friends that I'm walking with are all, eating like mortadella sandwiches and stuff like that. And I'm walking. And then on the other side, I see Black and brown kids coming from the other side. And I'm thinking, okay, I look like them, but I'm walking with these dudes. And then we all met up at our school. So going back to the, kind of, I guess, fast forwarding a little bit, I realized I was different when I had Blacks calling me whitewash. I had whites thinking, you're one of us, but you're not really one of us. Wow. And so I'm kind of pulling back, and if I thought a little white girl was cute when in grade 2 or 3 or 4, I'm like, is that okay if they thought I'm cute, or if they thought, do I have to like this? Do I have to like that? Let me tell you, it was a mishmash of stuff going on in my mind. Wow. But thank goodness I was able to kind of just bring in and kind of, I like you. We cool. We can throw down. And it kind of I realized the community that I lived in at the time we kind of mishmashed and kind of did our thing. You felt the discrimination when it came out in different ways, but through the music, through I think it was more music than anything, because at that time there was no Fresh Prince in the late 80s. That's when it came about. But in the mid 80s it was kind of like, it was more music. But going back to now, what my definition of Blackness would be, I would say it's a comfort, man. It's this unified comfort that when I'm amongst my people, but hear this, it's unfiltered because it's that comfort that I feel when I'm with and I say my people, when I don't see hypocrisy, when I don't see a sense of pretentiousness, when there's no titles connected to who you are, when there's no feeling of like, just look at me, man. I'm you, you, me, we good. You know, that's when I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it right here, right now. This is a perfect example of blackness to me. When I feel like I'm just spewing out stuff and I'm not thinking about it. I'm not thinking, man, can I say that? Am I going to offend somebody? And it's funny because you could offend your own people if you're not in that. If they're not feeling you, they might think, yo, you can't say that here right now, man, because I'm trying to. And that's even amongst our own people. So for me, it's really unfiltered with no hypocrisy. It's just that energy that I feel, kind of like right here.
Okay. And you know, I think Simone sort of set us off when she came out and she said "talk the Tingz," and it's just it's an in rhythm, right? It's something that we know what "talk the Tingz" means, right?
Exactly.
We know when we tell each other we can talk the Tingz, right?
Yeah.
And when she came out and said that right away, you know, it said that I think that comfort level was there right away. Now I'm going to go to Andrew Smith. Quickly, if you could tell us, you know, because we've heard, you know, two individuals who you know, we're talking about, you know, from a British perspective, and then North America. We're going to go to the Caribbean, and then we're going to go back to England with the future Dr. Jackie, right? But I'm coming to you, Mr. Smith. Tell us quickly, Blackness, you know, mediated by the British, but in a Caribbean context. You know, what was your sense, or what is your sense, or what is your understanding of Blackness? Is it something that can be defined? Do you have a working definition with regards to Blackness? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I do. It's not perfect, but I do have one. But let's start with the Caribbean British context. So I grew up in Jamaica, and a lot of my education in politics and social structures and stuff like that came from reading my dad's texts that he had and we didn't have a library, he had a cabinet. And one of the books he had in there was Michael Manley's The Politics of Change. And I was always struck by something he said in that book. He said, the Jamaican people, the Jamaican culture was disfigured by colonialism and slavery.
Okay.
And you can take that to the wider Caribbean context, right? The wider Caribbean. There's a disfigurement, right? So for me growing up, I didn't really worry about whether I was black or not. The whole idea came up with a generation before me because it was ever present to them.
Gotcha.
Because I was born in post-colonial Jamaica, while my parents were born in colonial Jamaica, right? And so
are you saying you were born after independence?
I was born after independence.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So when you're talking to your parents and they tell you stories about black and white relationships in Jamaica, I heard them and I understood them, but they were sort of foreign to me because it wasn't my reality. It's not how I felt, because white people were minuscule, and the other races that lived in Jamaica are martyrs out of many one people, but really it was a black dominated society, right? And so I felt like just a boy or a man, right?
Because everyone around you was black.
Majority, 90% of everybody around me was black. So it didn't affect me in the same way. And then until I emigrated, and then I realized, this is different, right?
Yeah.
But the other, so there's all these ramifications with blackness. There's these areas in the world or locales where you're just a human. You don't even see yourself as black. And then there are areas in the world where, based on time and locality as well, because I told you about my parents in the previous generation, right? It affected them, right? And it still affects us as a culture, because certain things that came out, Michael Manley is talking about the disfigurement of our culture, meaning that there are certain things we do that doesn't enhance us, but we still do them.
Okay.
Like my wife used to decorate weddings, and as a hobby, that was our hobby business. And she and her father went to decorate this house for this lady who begged her to come and do it because her daughter was getting married, and she saw her work and she loved it. So she got to the house. Her dad was helping her bringing the stuff in, and one of her daughters walked in and said, "Mama, you hire black people for work for you?" Me would have never do that. Right? That meaning, I should say it in English. Mommy, you hired black people to work in your house? I wouldn't have done that. And my father-in-law wanted to turn around and walk away instantly.
Okay.
Because he wasn't into that foolishness.
Right.
He just wanted to leave. But she'd already made a contract to decorate the place. So, and she didn't feel good about it.
Yeah.
But this was our people,
Yep.
even from the Caribbean, saying that they would not hire their people.
And Drew mentioned that, right? In what he was saying before with, the comfort level sometimes within our people, you meet up with these challenges, right?
Right.
So quickly, if you could quickly, Andrew, just give us your definition of, because you said you had a definition. So just give us quickly your working definition of blackness.
So for me, blackness is a political, social, and cultural construct.
Ooh, okay. And I'm gonna hopefully we'll get a chance to tease that out, because usually I've heard people say it's a social construct, but you're bringing in political, right? And what was the other you said? Cultural as well. Okay, interesting. All right. And I want to bring Jackie in, and I want to ask you, Jackie, you grew up in the UK. I'm assuming your parents are from the Caribbean.
Right.
Were you born in the Caribbean?
No, I was born in the UK.
You were born in the UK, and then you came to Canada in the 90s. I want to know if you have a perspective that has been impacted by these different because Andrew Smith just mentioned the different locales and the different times and how those impact the perspective of blackness, right? So you've got a couple of different locales to work with, and have those impacted your understanding of blackness? And do you have a definition, or do you feel it's something that can't be defined?
I think it can be defined, because there's a lot of people that have different definitions. And I think what we need to do is to get all these definitions and put everything together to come up with one. But just to talk about my perspective of blackness from at the age of 10, I would say that my blackness was taken away from me. And what I what I mean by that is similar to my colleagues' experiences. Is my parents moved into a white area. I had five siblings, and my parents obviously wanted better for us. So my schooling, the school that I went to, the first day that I went to this particular school, I felt uneasy, and it was an uneasiness that I had never felt before. I was 10 years old. And that sort of hence my book, the teacher, everybody looked at me when I entered the class, and she ordered me to sit at the back. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And so until I started, I went out in the playground, and they were throwing stones at me.
Wow.
And again, I didn't say anything to my parents, because I didn't want, they had 6 children. My mom was a nurse. She was busy doing shifts. My dad was a long distance lorry driver. I'll translate long distance truck driver.
Yes.
So it was a strange, and this is what I find interesting, because we mentioned the word that we different. We're not actually different. We're unique. So I'll be honest with my parents did actually see the headmaster or the translation
Principal.
Principal. You know, just they so happened to have a day off and were able to go to the school, and the principal told my parents that I would never get on. Whatever that meant. I was put in the dunce class. I never knew what dunce meant.
Wow.
And I kind of said that with pride. Oh, I'm in the dunce class. So I didn't know what that meant. So I was automatically, by default, put in the dunce class. And like I said, I didn't know why I was being treated different until the name calling.
Okay.
And then I realized, oh gosh, that's why. And when I say that my Blackness was taken away from me, I didn't want to look the way I did. I wanted to look like everybody else. I wanted the white skin. I wanted the long hair. And then I felt that if I had that, I would belong. They would like me.
Okay.
So at home, I would wash my hair and put a towel on it, and I would sort of do this.
Do you know how many Black women I've heard say that they did that?
Yes.
Right? Wrap the towel up and would flip the hair around.
Yes.
Right? And I'm seeing that Jamie, there was a comment there that says, is there really one unifying experience? And one of the things I'm seeing that's coming out, even just from the stories that you guys are relaying here, is the otherizing that we all experience once we are taken out of an environment where everyone looks like us.
Yes.
We are instantly othered.
Yeah.
Right. So that seems like one experience that sort of kind of unifies us to some degree, right? This otherizing that we experience. But quickly, you said that you had a definition, a working definition that you sort of use with regards to Blackness. What is that definition?
I think my definition, it obviously stems from my experience. That Blackness is a unique, a precious, it could be a feeling or an experience that we should embrace.
A feeling or an experience that we should embrace. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Listen, we're going to dive into this topic even further. I think we're off to a nice, rich start, especially with the fact that I like that you're all giving these, very personal and vulnerable experiences. And again, I think it speaks to what Drew was saying with regards to, when you're amongst your people, you can just sort of take a breath and just let it out, right? And that's what this whole Talk the Tingz thing is all about, right? So we're going to take a quick look at a clip here. The clip is about Jamaican British, which is something that Simone was talking about, right? So we're going to take a look at this clip, Jamaican British, and then we're going to come back and dive into more discussion around this topic. What is Blackness?
Some people would deny that I'm Jamaican British. Nose Anglo, hair straight. No way I'm Jamaican British. They think I say I'm black when I say I'm Jamaican British. But the English kids at school made me choose Jamaican British. Half caste, half mule, house slave, Jamaican British. Light skin, straight male, privileged Jamaican British. Eat the callaloo jerk chicken, I'm Jamaican. British don't know how to serve our dishes, they enslaved us. At school, fought a boy in the lunch hall, Jamaican. At home, told dad that I hate them. All them Jamaicans, I'm British. He laughed, told me, you cannot love sugar and hate your sweetness. Then took me straight to Jamaica, passport British. Cousins in Kingston called me Jar English. Proud to have someone in their family, British. Plantation lineage, World War services. How do I serve Jamaican British when knowing how to war is Jamaican British?
Okay, so there are a few things in that piece that will give us an opportunity to sort of jump off on. One of the things I want to talk about is, where does this measuring stick, because there is a measuring stick with regards to Black authenticity, right? You know, are you black enough, or you're black enough because you do this, 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 and this, or you're black enough because you sound like this, this, and this, or you listen to this, or you know, where does this measuring stick come from, and how do things like skin complexion, phenotype, really, right? Skin complexion and you know, the thickness of lips and the nose and all those kinds of physical features. How does that play into being considered authentically black? Because we heard this young man, he's grappling, right, with identity, and a lot of it is connected to phenotype, right? He's saying at home, he's being raised with this as Simone said, you know, this Jamaican understanding of blackness, but his phenotype puts his blackness in question. Where do you think this is coming from? So I'm gonna come to back to Jackie, and then I'm coming to you, Drew, with regards to where is this measuring stick for blackness coming from, and how does it impact our understanding of blackness?
I think my thoughts was looking at the media and how we are portrayed.
Yes.
Do we, like the gentleman that was speaking about himself, do we see white Jamaicans in the media? And what do we look like in the media? And this is, I'm sort of thinking about for example, our teenagers or even young adults who are very influential, and how we're portrayed just as a culture in itself in the media. So I think that's something that we need to look at carefully. You know, how can that change? You know, how can that change? And I'm also thinking about the stereotypes.
Yes.
The stereotypes that the media portray us.
Can you tell us a little bit about the British media and the portrayal of blackness? You know, I'm thinking about those three boys who missed the penalty kicks in the Euro Cup, right? And it was so interesting because, you know, as Andrew Smith was saying, you know, time and place impact blackness, and one of those boys was biracial, right? One of those young men was biracial, and last time we were discussing this topic, the gentleman, one of the gentlemen that were on the show, he was from Brazil, and he said, in Brazil, you got to be about 90% black to be considered black. But, you know, here or out in other parts of the world, if you have one drop, right? If we can see anything, your nose looks a little too broad, you're black, right? So I want you to talk a little bit about, you know, because these three boys, right? Maybe in Brazil or somewhere else, maybe one of them might have been let off the hook because he's quite light skinned. You know, but in England, all three of them were black, and the reasons they missed were because, you know, they were black. And you know, you know, can you tell us a little bit about the media and the media portrayal of blackness in England?
I think we also need to look at how they were represented, you know, how they were supported. Did we as a culture, as a black culture, kind of sort of look down because of embarrassment? Or did we embrace, you know, did we as a culture embrace these three footballers? You know, that's what I didn't see, is how we supported them.
Wow. Interesting.
Right?
Interesting. Okay, Andrew,
I'd like to add.
sorry, go ahead, Simone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in addition to what Jackie has just shared, I'd like to take that point about the three footballers just a little deeper, right? So, number one, the British press themselves, they operate at a level where they have to rip you to shreds.
Yeah.
Mercy.
You could be, you know, you could be black, you could be white, you could be Italian, it doesn't matter who you are. Like once there's some kind of, once there's a story to tell, they will sacrifice you, Meghan and Harry.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
I'm also going to say Charles and Diana, okay, because Diana was hounded, right? she's not black, right? But there's a culture of just breaking people down and ripping them to shreds in the British media. Okay, so that's just like general, right? Now, the fact that these young men were chosen to play as a part of the UK football team, we already know that there is racism in and around football for many years.
Yes.
Right.
So, you know, in my opinion, the coach should have foreseen, if I put these three boys up, even though I believe they're the right boys, right? If they miss, and we have a history of missing penalties, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yes.
They're known for missing penalties. I'm going to get backlash, I'm sure, for saying that, right? But there should have been some foresight to say, you know, we need to protect these boys.
Wow.
Should they miss? You know what I mean? There should be like an extra layer because we know the racists are going to show up, and they did. They showed up. They showed up very strongly seconds after the game was over. Right. So I just wanted to just share that there is already a pattern of how the press operates, regardless of race. But because there's such deep racism in football, there really should be like an extra added protection. And there's a lot of work that people are doing to, you know, call out racism and, you know, have some kind of penalty in place for showcasing racism, whether it be, you know, closing down your Twitter accounts or whatever it may be. Like there is action that's being made in that department, but I feel like there should have been an extra layer of support for them.
And I like, and I like what I'm seeing here. This comment on the screen here. Black players are only praised for strength and physical attributes. White players are seen for tact and quality. And it was interesting that, you know, with these black players, they were all pretty much late subs into the game. They threw them into the game very late, and you know, their first touch of the ball was with the weight of the nation on their backs to make these penalty shots, and they had only been put in the game, and then one of them was like 18, 19 years old, something like that. So it was a lot of pressure. You're absolutely right. The coach needed to maybe think a bit more about that decision. So Drew, I want to come to you. You know, you're a sports enthusiast, so you can speak to this as well, but I also want you to think about or talk to us a bit about, and someone just mentioned it as well, you know, Simone mentioned it with regards to Meghan Markle and you know, her phenotype as well. So, you know, for a while she was sort of skating by, and I feel like some of the things that have happened recently have made her realize, man, I am actually black, like, you know.
Right. It kind of just hits you, because I think I find with regards to our race, we are a marketable race, like very marketable. We're marketable for, we know, the sports, the way we look, the way we dress, the way we cut our hair, the way we dance, the way we act, the way we tell comedy, whatever it may be. We're very marketable.
Agreed.
And I find other races tend to jump on that piece. And they tend to just kind of, you know, I remember like in the 80s, Michael Jordan cut his hair off, bald head. When we would think of that back then, it would be like skinhead is white. Then all of a sudden, you got guys that had long curly hair, cutting their hair off, being bald. Marketable race, I find. But I find the minute something tends to kind of slide. I mean, we all know a year ago with the whole George Floyd thing that took place, and I say that very general speaking. That's a whole nother topic in itself. But then all of a sudden, it's like you start to see people, you know, wearing the shirts. The shirts it's not even about wearing the shirt for, you know, I can't breathe shirts or the hashtags. It's almost like you start to wonder, are you doing it because it's marketable, or are you doing it because you really believe in the cause? And it still does. It irks me, because sometimes I'm hearing people talk, and I'm saying non-blacks, and I'm hearing them speak and about, you know, I think it was wrong, but you know, I wasn't there, but I know it's wrong. But you can kind of see that, like, it's like, you can see that there's something that is just not quite sitting right where, but at the same time, but I'm going to put the hashtag, or I'm going to be Blackout Tuesday on my Instagram screen, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's almost like I want to get everyone together. I'm going to say, tell me what it means to you. What does it mean to you? Is it something that's just marketable for today? But then, I mean, I haven't heard anyone talk about George Floyd in a while. I haven't heard anyone talk about say her name in a while. It was popular, and for me, I think it comes down to I wish I could just have a way of distinguishing. Are you here for me and my people, or are you here for the treat of the week, the trend of the week, the hashtag of the week? Are you educating, whether in your classroom or with your son or daughter, because it's the right thing to do? Because if you don't do it, you're going to look at as the one who didn't do it, the one who's not doing it. Let me be at your dinner table and know what you're talking about, and not just the table right now just because you need to be here. And that's the problem that I'm finding that I struggle with. With amongst people. It could be colleagues. It could be just generally speaking. I'm constantly processing. Do you have an authenticity to what you're saying to me? Or is it just something that you know is going to kind of appease me because I am who I am? And with Meghan Markle, I think she's probably in the same boat. I don't know. Are you appeasing one population? But when you go back to Harry, you're saying, I wish I could do something else. Like I don't know. I need to know. I need to know really where you stand.
So and you, I like, because you said something about I am who I am, right? And that's what I really want to get your opinion on this, Drew. Like what is authentic Blackness? Like what makes you, is there really a measuring stick? Is there really something that we should hold people to, or is it this I am who I am and I don't need to measure up? Like what is your thought on that?
I don't even want to say there's a two side to it, in a sense where I am where I am right now, but then if I go to my job or if I'm educating kids and I look at the landscape very quickly of who can I switch off and be a little more well-rounded or constructed? I don't want to have this sense of ambiguity in everything I do. I want to be able to be explicit and just come correct. This is me one time. Peel the layer off and just be me. Because I think a lot of us tend to, we know this, we have a way of just being able to kind of say the right thing, do the right thing, and it's almost like we're forecasting. I know what you're thinking you want me to say, right? Let me give you a little bit of something, and I'll add a little bit of who I am, but not too much, because you may not be ready for this. You may not even understand this.
Wow.
So let me speak your language. So
the code switching, huh? Yeah.
And so it's kind of like this forum is. I almost feel like it should be it should be a symposium open to people that can now see this and say, "Man, this is really what they're thinking." Okay. All right then.
Jackie, you want to piggyback on what Andrew's saying?
I agree. I think we need to, because we talk about measuring up. Measuring up to whom? To what? For what? I think at the end of the day, and I agree with you, we listen to people who have totally different perspective from ours, and what they're saying is very frustrating, especially when you know that they're not right in what they're saying.
Right.
We also have to think about, when we're talking about Blackness, how do we educate? How do we articulate without being aggressive, without being angry? And it is easy to get aggressive and angry because it is so frustrating. Because their vision is occluded, it's cloudy. So I think that's something that we really need to think about. How do we educate without being aggressive, without being ignorant? And it is difficult. It really is hard. But I think that's something, as Blackness, as a culture, we need to try and articulate.
If I can say one thing really quick.
Go ahead.
I know with certain school boards, they might say in the classroom, or it might be a mandate, you can't start with slavery, because it's you know it's not what we are right now. And to me, because I'm be honest with you, yeah, you can I think you can. I think you can personally, because to me it's like there's modern day slavery happening right now. If you want me to kind of mix it up and add a little bit of social media to it, it's the same thing. Whether you were on my neck in 2001 or you're doing it in the 1800s in different ways, it's still slavery is slavery. It doesn't matter the era. So I know even when I'm in an educating realm, I'm always thinking to myself, how am I going to tell you the truth without doing it in such a way that it's going to water it down to a point where you're not really seeing it. You know, like I said today to some students, I said, and we've all heard this before, that truth is written by the winners. We know this. And they actually said it. And then because in terms of like when we were talking about what does that mean to them, and these are mind you, it was minorities in my class, but they got it. They understood. And when they understood that, it was almost like I felt, okay, now I can say some stuff to you that at least you're going to realize I'm just trying to speak some truth to you. You right? And so I don't know. I just think it's so important that we kind of get that out to those younger people. They understand there's a truth and there's one that you're going to see on social media with the memes and everything else that is a little bit sketchy.
A little bit. And it's interesting that you touched on, and I'm coming to you, Andrew Smith. But it's interesting that you touched on the fact that, you know, there's this movement within the Black diaspora to, you know, let's not talk about enslavement. You know, let's move past. Let's move. And you know, when you think about you know, Jews, their enslavement happened thousands of years ago. You tried to tell the Jews not to celebrate the Passover. Right? You would never do that. It's a part of who they are. It's a part of their culture, their experience, and how they overcame it and what they've done. And you know, you tell them not to talk about the Holocaust. No, right? It's a part of their cultural understanding, and they have a mantra: never again. Right? It's not going to happen to us again, and they ensure, you know, or they come together to try to ensure that it won't happen again, right? But we're the ones that want to fast forward something that past something that really makes us very unique because we actually survived it, right? When a lot of other ethnic groups didn't survive, you know, that type of oppression at that level, we actually survived it. It's actually part of our testimony. Right? But now, Andrew Smith, I want to come to you quickly, and I want to ask a question here because I see we've got someone who said the media controls what Blackness is. In social media, in the social media era of information at your fingertips, ask a child 10 wealthy Blacks who aren't athletes or media celebrities. I want you to tell me then, you know, how did you deal with your children in understanding, you know, Blackness, you know, in an era where social media kind of, you know, dominates and spits at our kids what Blackness is. What were some of the things that you know, how did you mediate that and explain that to your kids?
It was a constant fight. No, it was. We had a conversation yesterday, and I actually asked my two sons, because they were here, who's Chris Gale? And I should never mention that because the audience doesn't have the backstory. But at least one of them could answer. The other one thought it was someone from church. But for the audience, let the audience know who Chris Gale is. He's a Jamaican cricketer, and we're talking about our culture arriving from the Caribbean and how the present culture of the Blacks here sort of absorbs our kids, and so, for instance, there's a struggle between the Jamaican or the Caribbean culture and the culture of the North American that's already here, right? And so, but back to the question about the media and how you fight it. I kept providing information and having conversations. So I became an enthusiast about Black history and Black culture when my dad told me, no uncertain terms, that there were universities in Africa when the Europeans were still living in caves. and so he was trying to correct my thinking, right?
Okay.
And my pride about who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then in college, I was a science student. So this one weekend, my major was chemistry and biology, and this one weekend we had this science students weekend, and they brought in this archaeologist. He was a chief archaeologist to the Jamaican government. He turned to be of the same religion as I was previously. He was a Rastafarian. But I spent that afternoon, I sat and ate lunch with him in the cafeteria, and I spent an afternoon engrossed in what he had to say, right? Because he studied archaeology in Africa.
Okay.
Right? And he was like changing my outlook, telling me stories, right? About he was sort of changing my mindset based on what I've seen on TV and what the popular culture would tell me about what Africa is.
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw how that affected me and the pride it developed in me. So I did the same. I had to tell, you know how the Bible says, it exhorts Christians, and Moses was talking to the Jews. He says, teach them while you lie down, while you walk by the way, while you stand up, while you sit. You have to teach them constantly.
Okay.
Right? So you only way to do it is to tell them the stories. Tell them what you know. Tell them, right? And that's how I personally combated it.
Okay.
But it was still a struggle because the outside influences are very strong.
Okay. So your way was, and that's interesting. You're basically saying it was something that you had to be very intentional about doing.
Right.
Very intentional. Okay. Simone, I want to. Well, actually, you know what? Let me deal with this question here on from one of the viewers. Is blackness the same for a child who grows up in Kenya versus Canada, the UK, or the US?
Yes.
Simone, what are your thoughts here? And then I think Andrew, you're saying yes. So I'm going to come back to you. But Simone, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Same for a child growing up in Kenya.
I'm thinking about the Kenyans I know now, but I think there'd probably be some similarities. Kenya, just like Andrew had spoken about earlier, being that he was born in Jamaica and it sounds like you were schooled there, so you were in and around, Black people, right? Yeah. And then when you moved to Canada, you're like, whoa, okay, I get it now. Kenya probably would have a similar experience, I'm guessing, but probably there might be more of a thing about classism there. I'm not sure. Blackness in Canada and in the UK and the US for me.
Having lived in all three places.
Yes, I've lived in all three places. So what I think it's been easy for me to assimilate with the Caribbean background, right? So when I came to Canada, it was easy to assimilate into the Canadian Caribbean culture. There were places I could go to get my food. There was a heavy influence of the Caribbean in the church I attended and in the friends that we had. So, and then equally, Canada does have quite a lot of Brits. I didn't know that until when I got there. I'll give you a little story, Greg. I applied for a job, interviewed. My third interview was with who would be my boss, and she was British. I then found out that they had moved the international marketing team from London to Canada. On my first day, I'm walking through the hallways and I'm just hearing British accents. Right, so I then learned that there were a lot more Brits in Canada than I thought. So again, it was easy to assimilate into those groups as well when I was there, because obviously I have the accent and the experience. Now living in the US, again, I assimilated somewhat into the Caribbean, the Caribbean culture where I am. A little bit more difficult to break into the other areas of American life. But essentially, there are some subtle differences, but some a lot of similarities.
So sorry, but I want to stop you there because you said now that you're in the U.S., you're going more towards your Caribbean culture. So do you feel
it's easy to assimilate because there's commonalities, right?
Because you're in Texas, right?
I'm in Texas.
So do you feel that it's a little more challenging for you to fit in with the African Americans? Right? Is there some otherizing there? Do you
yeah, there's a difference because I think they kind of have to figure out who I am. A lot of, in my experience, I'm not painting this for everyone, but you know, there is some education that I have had to share around, you know, being Black British because it's not something that's common. Look at my name. My name is not, you know, like a typical African American name, right? And then obviously my accent is very different. So there is a level of education, and even for you know my Caucasian friends, I've had to, you know, give. You know, sometimes the question, I know where they're going with the question. So, you know, I share the Windrush story and I'm very proud and very happy to share that story so that they understand and know who I am and where I come from. And, you know, I'm not a walkover. I have a very strong background. So there are differences, just to answer the question, I think.
Okay. All right. And Dr. Jack, or soon to be Dr. Jackie, I see your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Simone. My thoughts was it depends on the age of the child. Because I'm thinking of my childhood where there were no boundaries. The school that I went to was very diverse. I mean, I didn't know what the difference was in terms of color. And until I moved into was transferred into another school. So children, you know, like I said, depends on the age. They just see everybody as the same. And then we start to think about, when does that change? Is it the media or is it from their parents? And then when that changes, I think, sort of back to your question, I do agree with Simone, is that they probably have the same responses in terms of Blackness, no matter where they are. You know, but then I also was thinking with my children, when they tell their colleagues or their friends, oh, my mom's from England, and they look at my children and say, but you're Black.
I identify.
Right? And they're in disbelief. You know, it's again, education is an unfortunate, lot of ignorance, but there are a lot of Black people in England.
Yes.
That's the response. And I find that quite interesting, that's the response. I have 3 children on different occasions. They have said that to me. My friends don't believe that you're from England because we're Black. And I just find that very, very interesting. I said, well, what do you say to them? And they said, well, my mom is from England, and they don't believe them. So I find that very, very interesting.
And I'm sure when they hear you over the phone and then they see you show up and it's like, oh.
And that has happened.
Wasn't expecting you.
That's
the reaction is real. I wish I could just take a picture.
Yeah.
That moment,
and the unfortunate reality is when I apply for positions, which I have applied for positions, full-time positions in teaching. My name is Jackie Robinson, and then we're doing a virtual interview and they see me. And then I question, I mean, this is something that I cannot prove, but I know I didn't get those positions because, you know, I just know.
The covert racism, right? That is, it almost feels like you're shadow boxing, right?
Exactly.
Because you can't fully prove it, you can't exactly hit it, but you know it's there, right? Now, there's an interesting comment again coming from the viewers, and it says, given the rampant stereotypes, how do we reclaim the definition of Blackness from the media? Given the rampant stereotypes, how do we reclaim, right? So it goes back to what we were talking about initially. And a few of you shared that you do actually have working definitions of Blackness. But now these definitions that you have of Blackness, I'm sure they don't go along necessarily with the stereotypes, right? I'm sure your definition of Blackness is not that we all eat chicken, right? I'm sure your definition of Blackness is not that we all listen to hip hop, or that we all wear our pants low, or whatever the case might be. So given these rampant stereotypes, how do we reclaim these definitions that you have, these wonderful definitions that you have of Blackness? How do we reclaim those from the media?
You're doing it right here. We're doing it right here.
Mm.
I mean, we're doing it. This is a focal point. We need to be able to have outlets that allow us to tell our story, allow us to tell our story in an authentic, in an explicit, in a no holds barred kind of way, no ambiguity. Just put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also feel that we also need to have the audiences there to hear those stories, because I think only then can we allow others to kind of process what they're hearing, what they're seeing, our experiences, see us on a panel actually learning from each other the way they should be learning from us.
Okay.
And I think that's where I mean, I couldn't ask for a better outlet, Greg, because I think this is where it starts. So, I never forget when BET came to Canada. We were all so excited. We got it over here now. And then there was Flow. We got our first Black radio station now. And, we were all so hyped and so amped because we thought this is going to change. We are going to change it. And then all of a sudden, we've seen slowly but surely, G98.7 sold. We've seen BET. You don't really quite hear about it too much. Social media as we know it now has literally, I mean, it's almost like the tech talks of the world and all these different outlets that the kids are doing right now have now overshadowed anything like that. So I think it's a great question that the viewer asked, because how do we take it over? I think we got to start from the bottom up again. Starts things like this. Building viewership, building listenership, building that sense of, did you tune into stuff that is going to actually have you learn from what our stories are? That's my thought.
I like because you're talking about something grassroots, right? And we, are so much of a consumer society, because as you said, I remember when BET came and we were so excited. We really were, right? And then I remember my first, when I first started, I wanted to become an educator, and even before that, I was working as an educational assistant,
right?
And I was in a classroom, and the teacher in the classroom, a kid said, we had a TV in the classroom, and the teacher was giving the kids free time, and the kid said, "Can we watch BET?" And the white teacher said, "As far as I'm concerned, that's pornography. We're not watching it."
Yeah.
Because BET was showing us in a certain light, and showing only a certain one-dimensional aspect of who we are, right? And it was hard for me to hear the white teacher say it's inappropriate to show this station that is supposed to be a Black cultural representation to young people, because as far as he's concerned, it's pornographic, right? Very difficult. But I kind of like what you're talking about here with this whole grassroots. We can't wait for the commercial side to show who we are. We kind of have to start from this sort of a grassroots,
absolutely,
and build, right?
And that's why I think a lot of the athletes are taking a little bit of that stance, right? So you see LeBron opening up a school, and then you see the media kind of jump on that, and kind of it's almost like they're saying, okay, we'll give you this little starting point to kind of say, yeah, you got a couple athletes that are doing their thing for, right? But we need to not just start with the celebrity or the athlete making $1 billion because he can do it. Like I said, I guess I'm going back to reiterating, like, it starts, as you said, with the grassroots. It starts from here. It starts with people kind of tuning in. It starts with kind of lending these outlets out to those people. It starts with having something like this in a classroom, right? And not even having it at 7:00. Having it from 10:30 to 11 o'clock, and tune in at this time, so you 25 students can hear what is being said, and actually talk about it, write about it, do a journal about it, right? It's that kind of stuff, right? Because I mean, as I'm hearing all these conversations with all of you, a part of me wants to almost like pick up my phone and record it, but then I'm thinking, no, it's going to be recorded. So am I going to go to a class and say, tune in, let's hear this?
Yes,
that's what we need to do, and I think it starts right here.
Wow.
I think another part of the reclaiming is we have to start defining for ourselves who we are. And I'm not talking about collective, I mean individually. One of the most powerful things that happened to me at York University when another Black man asked me the question, Andrew, who are you? And I'm like, this is, and I gave him an answer, and he's like, no. And then he went through it. He said, I'm a child of God. I'm a man. Then I'm a Black man. Right? That might not be the same definition for you, but you have to understand who you are, right? In your head, right? Yes, this skin color here, right, which we call a genetic, in genetics phenotype, is the outward expression of what your genes say you are.
Okay.
Right? It's not all that you are, but it's what people see. So how you change people's perception of you is by knowing who you are and acting like that person who you are.
Okay.
Right? If you're a positive person, I mean, you can do a social experiment. Go around and smile at people and see what happens. Just get them a smile. Most of the people smile at you, right? So the change we want begins with us.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. No, I hear you.
And just to add as well, like, you know, my I think one of the things I idolized my parents, right? They to me were like the best example. And as I have my two younger, I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. They literally watch everything that I do, how I interact with people, how I respond, how I behave, even how I work, because I'm working from home now, right? So everything they're watching, and I watched my parents and a quick story, 20 seconds. You know, my mum started off back in the day as an admin and just worked her way up in a bank, and now I work for a bank. There you go. But she was one of very few Black women in the organization, and she became the head. Ended up training director after director after director, never promoted up into directorship.
Okay. Yeah.
It was your typical, Caucasian male that sat in those positions. Anyway. And I remember saying, like, Mom, like, you should get that role. Why are they not giving it to you? And she said, you know, there's politics, but they're paying me like a director. And we used to go to Jamaica every 2-3 years, right? We get to vacation, we get to this, we get to that. Like, I'm living the life that I want for my family. And there's principles there that I learned from her, how to work corporately, and just as a Black woman in the UK, she was my ultimate mentor. So I think we should be showing our kids first and foremost, you know, how to navigate and live and be as Black people.
Okay. And sorry, go ahead.
And I think it's important just to touch on that. It's important for us to be role models. And we talk about the media, and we know, I'll sort of stick my neck out and say the media likes to tell a story, and they like the negative side because that's what people listen to. But for us being role models, I think it's really important, and to showcase to our family and friends what we're doing. And I'll give a quick example. When I was attending my classes for my PhD, and they go around and introduce themselves and why we're doing the program. And everyone was saying pretty much the same thing. Oh, I want to go into research. I want to teach. I wanted to go into leadership. Me personally, that wasn't why I attended the program. I personally attended the program for twofold. I wanted to show the headmaster or the principal who told my parents years ago that I wouldn't get on. I had that internal feeling that I was going to prove him wrong.
Yes.
I also continued in my program because I wanted to be a role model for my children. And I actually said that. I didn't talk about the principal, the headmaster, but I did actually mention the reason why I'm doing this program is because I wanted to be a role model for my children and my family members. And what was interesting is that it was a male white guy who they asked him after I had said what I had said, and he said the same thing. He wanted to be a role model for his daughter. So, that I found interesting. And it's also just a matter of, being truthful, being role models. And, it's hard to get in the media. And you're right, we're doing the right thing in showcasing, Blackness in this forum. And we're doing the same thing for nursing. There's a nursing forum, and I think it's the Black Nurses Association in Canada. So we're moving in the right direction. We need to continue doing that, and we need to continue to support and educate each other. And I'll give you just one quick example. In nursing, in this forum, there were students, they were in their last year, their practicum, and we talk about Florence Nightingale, and none of them knew who Mary Seacole was, and who was a Black nurse, a pioneer, a Jamaican Nightingale, as her books are, and it was just somewhat sad that they didn't know, but it wasn't so much through any fault of their own, but it's the curriculum. It talks about Florence Nightingale. It doesn't talk about Mary Seacole. And I actually went to London, and this is years ago, and I wanted to find her grave. And I found it. I took pictures, and I educated my children. So we are moving in the right direction. We need to continue.
Yes.
And for all the audiences that's listening, we need to support each other. We have so much to offer in our showcases and what we've achieved. Show off. Yeah. Show off and tell people what we're doing and what we've done.
Yeah, definitely. And Jamie, I see Jamie said something there.
We have to be a role model for them and us. Yeah, I saw that.
Right? Yeah.
And I think it's exactly what the soon-to-be doctor just mentioned. I mean, it's so true. We have 5 adults on this panel right now with different experiences, talking about things that are universally important. Doesn't matter what culture you're from, religion you're from. Anyone can be on this panel, or anyone can be in the audience and hear this and can say, "I didn't know this. I have to understand this." And I think that it's essential with what the viewer said. We got to be that role model for each other. We got to be each other's fan, and we got to root each other on, and we got to. But the other thing, even as an educator, I also think is important is this. We also got to let them understand that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be. I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say, look, when I was like 8, 9 years old, I stole something. I probably stole a couple of times. I'm not saying that it's right, but a lot of these kids, you get to speak their language. If they think that everything has to be perfect in their world in order to be where they need to go, they're going to be thinking, man, if I screw up, then I'm just going to go right back to in their mind, like mopping floors, so to speak. Okay. They got to know that it's not about doing something wrong to do it right. It's about being able to make a mistake and being able to say it's okay, brush yourself off and get up and still come back. So when I tell the story to someone says, but Mr. T, I got something going on right now that is kind of holding me back. I think whatever that thing is that's holding you back, it can be self-corrected, right? It's not going to stay on you all the time. It's not something that can't be it's a blemish. It can go, whatever it is, it's going to come off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they can see that us as a people can be not just, we used to say, not just an athlete, but a student athlete, or you can you can do both simultaneously.
Yeah.
That's
you don't
what
have
I
to
think.
Sacrifice one for the other.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
I think that's what they need to understand.
That was the challenge that we had growing up, right? You felt like you had to sacrifice the academic side of you to be Black. And it's like, no, you can have both, right? Now,
that's what I found weird in moving here, because I grew up playing chess and doing well in school and playing on the football team, playing on the basketball team, and playing cricket all the time, right? There was no you're a jock or a nerd. You're a person who could do these things. You can actually excel at sports and excel at schoolwork.
You can have it all, right? And
I don't know if you can have it all.
Well, what I'm saying is, you don't have to. What I'm finding in the schools, and this is very challenging for us, is, it's almost like you have to divorce yourself from Blackness to be an academic, or you can't be you can't be considered authentically Black if you're academic, kind of a thing. And it's very difficult for us to get them to understand.
But both of you as educators have a responsibility. Like I had to fight it with my children, because I remember the day my son came home and told me that story about he getting the math question right and then turned into the white guy beside him and said, the Black guy got it right. And I'm like, what? Do you understand? You don't expect to get it right?
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, as educators, you have the responsibility to show them, and that's why I'm glad you're both teachers, because we need those examples in the classroom. I didn't have that problem because I grew up in Jamaica. The doctor was Black, the teachers were Black, the journalists were Black, right? So I never thought, I always thought I could be whoever I wanted to be.
Yes.
Right? But for my children,
it's
almost, because there's a culture that is pulling them, that is almost, there's a tug of war going on, right? And I use the word attenuate, but what it really means is that we diminish those positive areas of our culture, and then we accentuate the negatives, and it happens a lot. And that's why your professor, your teacher said he thought BT was pornographic, because it's not that it is, but BT was not the totality of Black culture.
Not at all.
It wasn't trying to represent Black culture too. It was just trying to get audience so we can sell advertising.
And that's where I want. This is the last one here. I wanted to just, because Janet JL Snag says here, is Blackness defined by how others see us, or how we see ourselves as people, and how we unite together, right? So, it's sort of going into what you're saying there. BET was sort of defining Black culture, right? For many people, and because the people that were, someone's telling you to preach, Andrew. For many people, that was their window to Black culture, was BET. So if the people that look like Black, the people that are putting this forward are Black, then it seems authentic. It's like, then it is Black culture, right? Because the Black people are the ones putting it out there, saying that this is who they are. But we're gonna wrap up. We've got just a very short time here, and I want to say quickly, or I want to ask quickly, and I'm going to ask you to give me your answer in about a sentence or two as we close here. Where can we find common ground to start to address some of the challenges that are unique to Black people all over the world? So we've talked about the fact that 3 of us on this panel started in England, and that those 3 have moved on to to Canada, and now one is in the US. Andrew started in Jamaica and is now moved here to Canada. So there are some challenges that we see that are similar in different locales, right? Where can we find common ground to start to address some of the challenges that are unique to Black people all over the world? And I'm gonna, Andrew, I'm giving, so you're gonna start us off, and everybody, you've got a sentence or two, and we wrap up very quickly.
So I don't know if I can do this in a sentence or two, but we have to talk to each other. I remember I was reading the history of Jamaica, and I went to my friend Stanley Oniobia, and I showed him. He's from the Igbo tribe in Nigeria, and I showed him what the textbook had to say about Igbos, their behavior when they were enslaved in Jamaica. And he looked at me and said, that's the white man writing that narrative. That's not who we are. And then he told me about the Biafran War. And then when I learned, now I know Igbos as ambitious, as strong, and I understand where that thing where we say in Jamaica we're little but we're Talawa, because they're a small tribe but they're very powerful. And I'm like, oh, so that's where it comes from, right? But if I read the story told of us, I thought they were docile and a very weak people, but that's not who they are, right? So we have to talk to each other, you know.
Okay.
Even if we're from different cultures and desperate as we are, we have to talk to each other.
And I like that, actually, you talking to someone from the continent to explain to you, no, this is really who you are, right?
Right.
I'm going to, soon to be Dr. Jackie.
I think our common grounds is, and we talked about this earlier, is knowing who we are as a culture, as Blackness, and we need to understand our history. And we talked about the Jewish history and how they recognize that. We need to, our common grounds is understanding who we are, understanding our culture, understanding our history. Then we can move forward. Then we can move forward and understand each other, understand us. And our common grounds, and I'm not saying anything different that we hadn't spoken about before, is respect and understanding, communication and education.
Drew, and then Simone will have the last word.
Okay.
No pressure, Simone.
I'm just gonna connect and tag on with what Andrew and what Jackie said. We need to communicate, but we got to do it with authenticity. We can no longer just kind of hide behind what we think we want to hear. I find that I don't want to feel that I'm looking at a 2-hour show, but there's 8 hours of editing. I want to feel that what's coming out of people's mouths is really what they want to say. And lastly, I was going to wrap up by saying we all 5 of us and our viewership have a story to tell. We're Black, but we all have a story to tell. We've all come from somewhere. And I think it's important, as Andrew mentioned, that communication piece. We have to be able to tell our stories. We have to be able for our stories to be transferred to other people so they can tell their stories. And then we can kind of bridge that gap and kind of have that opportunity to really hear each other and go from there.
And we need to create, as you've been saying all along, create these platforms.
Create the outlet, right? That's right. Create the outlet. I mean, if there's going to be some hashtags, let these hashtags mean something that will bring more people together for this type of common ground, right? Not something that's just going to be something that's to put on a shirt just to gain viewership or followers. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to be intentional. It's got to be meaningful. So
or bring in the advertising dollars.
Or that's a whole economic piece that we can get into another time. Yeah,
the commercialization of our culture, right? The commodification of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, Simone.
Hi. So I one of the things I say quite often is, as Black people, wherever we are across the continent, we're all cousins. We just got dropped off in different places, right? And I think my understanding of that grew as I did self-education. Don't expect to be taught the truth sitting in a classroom, right? Sorry, guys, I know you work for the school. There's more. There's a rich understanding of Black history that I think you will miss if you do not self-educate. So self-educate, speak to your children. Right now, again, with my 2 girls, we're reading about the kings and queens that existed way back when on the continent of Africa. Because I note that the slavery narrative, as important as it is, it's overpowering, and there's not enough of the pre-story and post-story now. I think that's really critical to understand, you know what, we were kings and we were queens and we were mathematicians and we were this, we were that, and, you know, yes, slavery, that, and then the post. So just to end with self-education, recognizing that we are all connected in some way, shape, or form, and we have a future. We have it. It doesn't end with where we're at now. There is a continued future, and I just want everyone to just show up in the best way that they can for themselves.
Yes,
and
yes.
Know where you're going.
Okay. I like the continuum, the full spectrum, right? So listen. I just want to say a huge thank you to every single person who was on this panel. Simone, Jackie, Drew, Andrew, I cannot thank you enough. I have enjoyed myself. I have, as Drew said, learned. I have been inspired, right? And I've also been given the feeling of, how can I say this? A bit of validation, you know, because Drew said we need stuff like this. And when you hear that from your own, right, it resonates with you. It resonates and it makes you feel, okay, we're doing something here, so let's keep doing it, right?
Big up Gregory Free.
Big up.
Well, not just me, because there is a huge team. GIA Productions is not just me, but you know, I want to say, and I guess I should be saying that you guys you've inspired us, and that you're giving us, you know, more of a reason to keep doing what we're doing, right? And you know, I see someone has said, you know, taught the Tingz, always informative. Thank you. All right. So to my panelists, and then of course to the viewers, I want to thank you all. We're all in this together. I like what Jamila Rollins said there. I gotta say it. They want to be black and think your song is how it feels, J. Cole, and she's talking about in reference to what we were talking about with BET, right? And there's a writer, his last name is Tate, and he had a book called Everything But the Burden, and it was this idea that you know, a lot of people like and admire Black culture, but they don't want the burden, right? So they'll take everything, but you guys keep the burden, right? I'll take everything else. I'll commodify and take everything else. And I see Gene Watson joining us all the way from Washington, D.C., you know, saying, way to go. Thank you, Gene. And one of my former students, an Italian, Franco Lacava, is saying, I'm always learning when I tune in. Thank you, Franco, my boy. Half-Life, yes, keep talking to Tingz. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will be back again next month, the last Tuesday of the month. And that's what we're doing going forward. The last Tuesday of every month, Talk the Tingz. This is where we do it. This is where we chop it up. Join us again. Thank you all so much. Have a good night. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Yo, defund them or disband them. Deploy them versus demand them. Racial profiling versus stops that are supposedly random. If we build it, they will come. Back in the day, they came with diseases, treaties, and guns, but now they come with bulldozers and city-sanctioned construction crews to give oppressive makeovers. We send our kids to you for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, seeking knowledge and not judgment, achievement and not discouragement, paying taxes to a government that funds the system but doesn't give refunds when the system systematically decreases the chances for advancement that we all deserve and hope for. I'm sick and in need of attention. But your attention is wrapped up in the retention of stupid stereotypes, believing that my problem is not what ails me, but what I look like. Join us and talk the Tingz.